What's up guys? Welcome back to the channel Hand Waving. Your friend Naruto Addict 2.0 is here again with a brand new Naruto fanfic that's going to change everything. A story where Naruto is betrayed and banished. But destiny has bigger plans for him. From exile to emperor, this is the journey of power, strategy, and love. Today's fanfic is titled, What If Naruto Ruled the Hearts of Konoha's Elite ANBU Women in Secret? Part 2. Due to Naruto having physical contact with Junko and Hinata, they were transported with Naruto to his unattended destination, and it took Naruto around 5 seconds to get to that unknown destination. He lay in the corner of a large room with a single dimmed light over a plain war room style table with a dozen brown leather chairs in the center. All in all, it looked pretty plain. Naruto himself was lying on the floor on his stomach with blood pooling. Junko was lying to his right, and Hinata to his left on their stomachs as well, and were stirring, but Hinata got up first. The first conscious thoughts that Junko had when she got up was wondering where she was, then seeing a large pool of blood and Hinata crying and shaking someone with bright yellow hair. Then shock before all her memories came flying back to her, and tears started forming in her own eyes. Rushing over to their sides, she immediately tried to put pressure on Naruto's major stomach wounds, but the two kunai were still deeply embedded. Hinata reached over to take them out, but her hand was immediately slapped away by Junko. "Don't, Hinata. If you take those out, it could kill him," explained a now crying Junko to a stunned Hinata. "My mom works as a nurse at Konoha's hospital. She taught me some first aid." She explained that objects like the kunai, they're embedded too deep to just yank out. "We need to stop the bleeding." Through her tears and after taking off and tearing up parts of her brown vest, she's starting to put pressure on parts of the wounds. She calmed Hinata down from her near panic attack a little and got her to help. She instructed Hinata to rip off her Yakuta's sleeves and instructed her to add pressure to another bad wound. Junko stopped crying with a look of determination in her eyes. She liked to read her mom's study books, since her mom was trying to become a doctor, but even she was surprised to see some of the minor wounds and parts of some of the major ones start or fully close, knowing that wasn't possible at the rate it was going. She also could have sworn that there was an orangish glow on some of the inner wounds. She shook her head. She would think about that at another time. She had someone to help, she told herself. She also was versed enough that she knew that she needed to get help, even if she didn't know where she was at, but she knew that someone had to get help. So she turned to Hinata, who was still crying a little. "Hinata," Junko said, getting the still shocked girl's attention. "You need to leave this room and get someone or Naruto-kun's going to die. Can you do this, while I try to stop the bleeding?" Hinata looked at Naruto, wiped away her tears, and had a determined look on her face now, and with a nod rushed out of the room, while Junko tried to put more pressure on Naruto's stomach wound, without messing with the still deeply embedded kunai. Hinata for her part was searching for a person that was currently going rather fruitlessly. She kept opening doors and calling, "Help," afterwards. Most of the rooms she looked into looked like simple bedrooms, with a simple wooden desk, a wooden chair or two, and two simple wooden beds. The last room was a kitchen, with a pantry being next door. She finally realized that no one was in any of the rooms, so to stop wasting time she tried to find a way through the maze of hallways through her limited use of her Bakugan. She didn't know how long she was going through the rooms until she came to the end of a hall and saw a big door that showed light was coming out the bottom of it, and curiously enough she couldn't see through it with her Bakugan. In pure desperation, she swung open the door, and screamed, "Help, please, I need help. He's dying." Osamu Sakakita, the leader of Takigakure, was having one of those days. Paperwork, reports of possible sabotage to his defenses, increased possible export prices, paperwork, his advisor Suian's constant complaining, paperwork, and problems with his niece Fu. That last one is exactly why he invited his very close old friend Sarutobi's pupil Jiraiya over to look at the seal placed on his niece Fu. Sometimes Osamu really wished that his brother Ozura and his wife Yui, and Osamu's beloved wife Suruko hadn't died in that mysterious fire that burnt down their house. There was what happened before that caused problems and a rift between him and his brother's wife. Takigakure's head doctor and an old friend of Osumu's, Dr. Hikaru Fujimaki, a man who is also Takigakure's resident seal specialist as well, and the one who placed Takigakure's biggest burden into Fu. Their last Jinchuriki disappeared due to the hate, and instead of coming back the Nanabi did. Osumu knew that their past Jinchuriki was dead but was still rather shocked that the Nanabi came back, surprised as well. However, the Nanabi didn't attack the village but came too close for comfort and had to be sealed. At least no one died in that aspect. It took him and his brother everything that they had to give time for Dr. Fujimaki to do his seal. The only child at the time capable of holding the burden was Fu, who was only 3 months old. Who knows if the Nanabi would have attacked the village or not. Now they were going to have a meeting between himself, Dr. Fujimaki, Fu, and Jiraiya to see if the seal needs work or is stable. Hikaru was proud of his work despite being Taki's head medical ninja, and although not exactly a seal master, was close enough to one. Though close enough wasn't good enough, plus Fu was complaining about a voice in her head, and both Osumu and Hikaru agreed that it needed to be checked. So finally getting in touch with Jiraiya, they asked for him to check Fu's specific Jinchuriki seal. Both also wanted to secretly get Jiraiya to sign their Ika Ika books, since he was the author. The meeting commenced the moment Jiraiya came to town escorted by a chunin, and after Osumu and Hikaru got their books signed. Osumu was rubbing his graying black hair, as his long ponytail swayed. He was wearing blue ninja pants, a matching blue ninja shirt with white trim, a mesh undershirt below that, blue ninja shoes, a black shoulder guard on his left shoulder, and a salt and pepper goatee mustache combo. He was really worried that one of the last of his family was going to be taken over by the Nanabi seven-tailed Biju. Hikaru, who had grayish blonde hair, and tan civilian shirt, and pants, 2 scrolls attached to his side, with black fishing boots, and a mesh undershirt on, was walking ahead of him with his skipping 7Y. Oh, niece Fu, who was wearing a short-sleeved baggy white shirt that overlapped her hands, a simple green skirt, and white ninja shoes. She had mint green hair, and orange eyes. Osumu looked at her happy-go-lucky attitude and smiling as she was talking to Hikaru about foods she liked and didn't, who in turn was just smiling at her. Osumu felt tired. He did everything he could to help her, yet most of the village was just plain afraid of her. They flat out ignored her, and walked cautiously around her. She had no one to talk to except him, Shibuki, and Hikaru. He understood their fear, but it didn't mean he had to like it and the treatment she received. It must have shown on his face because he felt a hand on his right shoulder, while Hikaru noticed but kept walking with a still skipping and oblivious Fu toward their destination to a sealing room in the Takigakure's emergency village bunker, which was unknown to her. Turning around, he looked at the understanding look from Jiraiya, and at the same time pain in his eyes. Jiraiya had huge spiky white hair, 2 shoulder-length bangs on the side of his face, with a rather large ponytail going out his back, and red lines going down his face from his brown eyes. He was wearing a horned forehead protector with the kanji for oil on it, and a huge scroll on his back. He had a wart on the left side of his nose, a green short shirt kimono, matching pants, and a mesh undershirt underneath it, and lastly he had hand guards, a black civilian-style belt, traditional getas, and a red haori with 2 simple yellow circles on the chest area. "Do you know someone similar?" asked Osumu casually with a hint of pain. A moment of silence descended upon the duo, since Fu and Dr. Hikaru were now long out of sight. Finally Jiraiya broke the silence that was beginning to become uncomfortable. "My godson, who doesn't even know I exist yet, is also a Jinchuriki. Sensei told me that you know the details, since you worked close to Minato as well. I sent Sarutobi Sensei a letter saying I was going to take over my duties as godfather when I get back later this month, and that we'll talk about it. Naruto shares the same problem Fu does, and from what I hear his situation is worse." Osumu flinched, and didn't even want to think about it. "Jiraiya," Osumu started, "I still can't believe that such a legacy is being treated as such, and in what way?" Ignorance seems to hold too much sway these days, and that is pathetic. Jiraiya nodded. Those reports, Osumu, are what convinced me to do what I should have done all along. I will take care of Naruto, and face my grief, Jiraiya finished rather solemnly. Osumu nodded, but Jiraiya wasn't done. You're not the only one of those that sensei confides in and has absolute trust in. For what it's worth, you're not the only person who has made mistakes and has regrets. Do what you can now for what counts, or we are no different than that pathetic ignorance. He then walked past Osumu, who stopped walking stunned. Jiraiya only took a couple of steps forward when he heard laughing behind him, and he stopped to look behind him in slight surprise. Osumu, for his part, was bending forward laughing. After a moment of calming himself down, he started walking toward Jiraiya and said, "Life is never simple, but overthinking things doesn't seem to help much either." Jiraiya chuckled, and just as Osumu walked beside him, they both started walking toward the ceiling room. It took them a minute to get there. They opened the door to see Fu still talking energetically to Dr. Fujimaki while kicking up and down her legs, one after the other, while sitting on a flat oval stone built into the floor. Dr. Hikaru, for his part, was smiling and was enjoying his time with his favorite patient. The oval stone in the center, which was used for ceiling, was the only thing in the room besides another door on the other side of the room matching the one that Osumu and Jiraiya came from. Closing the door behind them, and before Osumu or Jiraiya could say anything, the other door flung open in a rather swift way and bouncing off the wall a little. Everyone looked surprised, and everyone, but Fu, recognized the little girl as a Hyuga. Though Fu tilted her head with her pointer finger on her mouth, and said, "Help. Please, I need help. He's dying." Hinata then saw that there was indeed people who for her part looked important, if only she knew, and quickly added, "He needs a doctor. Please save my friend," before she started crying again. Acting quickly with the call for help and the word, "dying," Dr. Fujimaki quickly rushed to Hinata's side, with Jiraiya and Osumu a second behind. Putting his hands on Hinata's shoulders as he kneeled down to look at her and to try to calm her down. "Calm down, little one. Now tell me who's hurt and where they are," he asked calmly and with a smile. Brushing a tear from one of her eyes, Hinata spoke, "My friend Naruto-kun is bleeding to death in a room somewhere down one of those halls. Please save him." The doctor had a calm expression on his face but saw the weird expression on Osumu's face when this Hyuga said, "Naruto-kun," and grew suspicious with that, and when Jiraiya immediately ran down the hall before the young Hyuga even finished. "Alright, what's your name and is there anyone else with him?" asked Hikaru kindly. "I'm Hinata Hyuga and our friend Junko is with him," she said. The doctor looked the young Hyuga in the eyes. "It's going to be alright, Hinata-chan, we'll patch your friend up. Just show me where he is, okay?" Hinata nodded and with new determination directed them to where she remembered the room to be. Though going rather swiftly, they only made about halfway when they saw an angry Jiraiya carrying a young boy with blonde hair covered in what the doctor recognized as life-threatening lacerations, probable fractures, burns, and who knows what. Fu looked shocked and was speechless, while Osumu looked mortified. How could people do something like this to a child, and his child no less? Could this happen to Fu in the future? Osumu thought, sickened. Jiraiya turned Naruto over to the doctor. One very closer look at Naruto, he saw the wounds closing a little like Junko beforehand, but the blood loss was too terrible already and he needed immediate surgery. They all didn't immediately notice Junko quietly sobbing behind Jiraiya. "There's a fully stocked hospital a few halls down, I'll take him there immediately," then he and Naruto fully shunshined away. Osumu did a hand sign and said, "Shadow clone jutsu," and an identical clone of himself appeared. Turning to it, he said, "Tell Suian and Shibuki that I will not be home tonight, and will be back sometime in a week, and that we will have guests, and that I am fine, but doing something important." The clone saluted and then shunshined away. Out of the corner of his eye he noticed Fu still shocked but trying to comfort the other girls, while none of them noticed Jiraiya dismissing a frog with red and white striped clothing, but Osumu. Osumu gave a look to Jiraiya, nodded, opened a door to a bedroom to his left, and then addressed Fu with a kind smile. Fu-chan, let's look for clothes for these girls, and why don't we go to the kitchen a hall down and fix some food for our unexpected guests, and you can show me how much you've improved, okay? Fu looked thoughtful for a second, and then looked at the girls her age, and back to Osumu with a nod and a smile. Holding out his hand, Osumu took Fu's hand and started a debate with her on what they should cook. Jiraiya watched them till they went around the corner, and then looked at who was left. Both girls that he mused couldn't be more than 5 or 6 were looking at him with sad eyes. He swore to himself that when he gets back home there will be hell to pay. Just then the head messenger frog Waldo reappeared, causing both girls to jump in shock. Jiraiya-sama, he bowed and said sarcastically. Jiraiya hated this. He didn't like being addressed with such honorifics unless it was a gorgeous woman, and he knew Waldo was doing this purposely, since he's asked this toad like 1,000 times to stop calling him Sama sarcastically, yet he doesn't. A small smile graced the toad's face before finishing his report, but noticed the 2 girls and carefully relayed the message back by whispering to Jiraiya. Hokage-sama agreed with everything you said, but to bring Naruto back when he was fine and healed. Kakashi will be here soon with money for Takigakure for any and all expenses and to give them all the money, no matter what. The Hyuga Patriarch was with him at the time and said his daughter was fine staying here, as well as that Hokage-sama will talk to some guys named Kosuke and Manabu and that they should be fine with this decision. Well, that's my message. Call me when you need me, Jiraiya-sama. Then Waldo puffed away. That last part started getting Jiraiya to sweat to the point of completely ignoring the sarcastic toad's ending comment. Excuse me, is your grandfathers named Kosuke Maruboshi and Manabu Akado? He asked while staring at Junko. Not seeing Jiraiya start to sweat, she nodded happily. Yes, Kosuke and Manabu are my Gigis and my name is Junko Maruboshi. Jiraiya inwardly groaned. The last time he got caught peeping in Konoha, he did it when Manabu's daughter Eri was taking a bath. Next, too long ago when he peeped on Tsunade, it was his only other time he came close to death for peeping. He still had nightmares, and is still wondering how she threw his telescope so fast, and hit him so hard when she wasn't even a ninja. If that didn't happen, he would have made it scotch-free and he'd had to replace his favorite telescope too, while also staying in the hospital for 2 weeks for most of the injuries she by herself delivered. Kosuke and Manabu weren't even that mad, stating that he got luckier than the last ones. Now he had one of his worst nightmares, his worst nightmare being Eri and Tsunade chasing and then beating him, daughter and the most likely the Hyuga heiress and another of his ex-student's children as well he had to guard. Great. He had to behave on this trip, but he still needed info, he thought depressingly. Sighing, he turned to each of the girls who looked exhausted, and motioned them into the room that Osumu opened earlier. The room was like some of the ones that Hinata opened earlier. It had a plain wooden desk, 2 beds, and 4 simple wooden chairs. Jiraiya took a seat on one of the chairs while Junko and Hinata sat on the same bed looking like shit, while both were covered in blood, Junko way more than Hinata. For the record, you're in Takigakure and I'm a senior Konoha shinobi. Look, I would like to know what happened from start to finish, while we're waiting for some food and clothes. Both girls looked surprised, but Junko didn't look so sure. How do we know you're not going to hurt Naruto-kun like those others? Junko blurted out. All he was trying to do was help us find our way back to our guardians. He didn't do anything to those ninja who suddenly attacked him. Are you gonna glare at him too? For Kami's sake, he said he was living on the streets. She finished yelling at the top of her lungs, and was huffing. Hinata was silently sobbing again. Jiraiya for his part looked shocked and turned pale. He knew it was bad, but him living on the streets, he felt like hell, pure misery for not being there for Naruto all of these years, but that was going to change, and he already had an idea in mind. He just needed Kakashi to get here. Sighing and holding back from punching the wall next to him in frustration to not scare the girls, Jiraiya spoke. Naruto will be fine, that doctor is one of the best that I know, and no harm is going to come to him. No one should treat a kid like that, no matter what. He'll find no harm in my care. I also know that Hiashi, Manabu and Kosuke both are fine with you being here, girls. I just want to know what happened. Can you tell me, please? Hinata and Junko were both surprised that their father and grandfathers respectively were mentioned. Junko was still unsure, but something inside her told her that she should tell, and looking at Hinata, who nodded in her direction, the two began their tale. By the looks of anger on the man's face, her gut feeling seemed to prove right. The end of the tale came an hour later. Silence fell between the group, only broken when Osumu came in with clothes for the girls and introduced himself. Who then burst out laughing when the girls started bowing when they found out he was the leader of Takigakure. He told them not to worry about it, and that when they're done they should get some rest and that Naruto was going to be fine. Both girls looked like a load was taken off them, but never noticed the, "We have to talk soon," look he gave Jiraiya, who nodded back in return. Jiraiya told the girls that Naruto would have his protection when they got back, which put the girls at some ease, and told them that they should get dressed and that he'll wait outside. As he made it to the door, he told them that they should get some sleep and that he would wake them up when the food was ready. Both girls said, "Hi," and Hinata yawned. He then walked outside the room where Osumu was waiting, and followed him in silence until they reached outside the hospital where Hikaru was waiting outside the door for them. "I would like answers, if I could please," asked Hikaru, looking hard at Osumu and Jiraiya. Both men had guarded faces, but weren't expecting his next spot on next question. "That kid is the Kyuubi Jinchuriki and the fourth son, isn't he?" Osumu looked down, and Jiraiya was still for a moment. "What you just said is an S-class secret," Jiraiya proclaimed. Hikaru put his hands up in surrender, and just shook his head. "Hey, I'm not trying to dig for info, it's just I couldn't believe someone from your village would do something like that to this Naruto fellow, especially since his father was loved by that village if not worshipped like Kami." He finished with a sigh. Jiraiya looked down in shame, and there was quiet for a moment. They are so blinded by the fox that they can't see the similarities. Most of the ninja, from what I hear, don't even know or seem to have figured it out, yet a ninja from another village gets it in one go. My grief has even made me neglect my godson, something I hope to recertify soon, spoke Jiraiya in a regretful tone. Slight surprise filled Hikaru's face for a second. Hikaru then HMPHED before a smile appeared on his face while folding his arms, before pointing with his left thumb to the room behind him. "You'll be happy to know that your godson is a real piece of work. A lot of doctors lose hope in their patients. This kid would put them in their place. The kid fought like hell and is going to be alright." Osumu sighed in relief, and Jiraiya looked like a burden was taken off him. Jiraiya then filled in the two elder men the story, and both were angry and they didn't even really know any of the people involved. Hikaru spat on the floor before he spoke. "He will truly become an honorable man. Now, I have to ask. Would you like a copy of his injuries for your Hokage?" Jiraiya nodded and almost didn't want to ask but felt like he had to, and did. Hikaru didn't look like he wanted to answer but did, while he handed a copy of his report to Jiraiya. Both the kid's arms were broke in multiple places, 4 ribs on the left and 3 on the right, and his right hand was shattered, his spleen was ruptured, his skull was fractured in 2 places, his left thumb was broke, he had no less than 5 ninja star and kunai puncture holes. I took a ninja star out of his shoulder, 2 kunai had deeply punctured him in the gut, but didn't hit anything important, so thanked Kami for that. He has second-degree burns on about 61% of his body, his right collarbone was fractured, as well as his left leg, foot, and 3 toes, he had a severe concussion, many bruises and cuts, 2 broken toes on his right foot, severe blood loss, malnutrition, and to top it off he's got small traces of E. coli in his system, and early stages of cellulitis on his legs, while his right ankle and leg were also broken. Jiraiya started to silently let out tears as Hikaru was speaking but letting out killing intent by the time it was over, while Osumu tried to calm him down. Hikaru decided that he was going to get to the good news. The good news is that he will be fine with some food and rest, and that none of his injuries are going to be life-threatening. I almost had to do nothing at all, except clean the wounds and take out that ninja star and those 2 kunai. Those injuries are all that I found when I rushed him in there. It could have been worse or about the same, but the fox seems to have healed him almost completely. The fox even sped up his blood-making process that he is in no danger anymore due to his rather severe blood loss. Even the E. coli and cellulitis traces completely disappeared. Though he probably won't wake up for a while due to the healing process and severe chakra exhaustion. I have to say the fox probably rushed the job, and he'll be sore when he gets up. The amount of chakra the fox put out was unreal. It healed him fast, but made him incredibly tired. After a moment of silence, besides Jiraiya's silent tears, and praise to Kami for healing his godson from fatal injuries, Jiraiya asked if he could see his godson. The doctor nodded before opening up the door. Osumu was afraid to go in for fear of Fu and told the doctor that he was going to check on her, and the doctor said he was going to come as well so he could check the girls for any injuries in case they wake up, and because he wanted to try Fu's delicious cooking again. Jiraiya was left with his completely fine-looking godson in his underwear with a blanket on top. He started to cry loudly this time and promised himself and Naruto that he was going to make it up to him. He stood there for what felt like forever, but finally did leave when Dr. Fujimaki came by to let him know that the food was ready. Before he left the room, he looked one last time at his godson before closing the doors, never suspecting a different conversation was eventually happening in Naruto's mind are the changes that were going to happen slowly over the next few days. Naruto woke up crying. He felt like a failure for not protecting or really getting to know his new friends that he had left. After a few minutes he decided to get up and see where he was, and what he saw confused his mind greatly. He was fine and had no injuries, and he looked to be in some kind of sewer. Exploring a lot of Konoha's sewer system before he knew he wasn't in there. There was little light, and pipes running all over the place. Young Naruto couldn't figure out which direction to go but decided to go forward since there was light in that direction. He came upon a big cage and inside he heard movement. He didn't have to wait long as a giant nine-tailed red fox came upon him. He started shaking a little in fear, but before he could ask, "What's what?" the fox spoke. "So here's my jailer coming for a chat. I'm happy you're up finally. It's been 8 days before a form of consciousness was in you that allowed this link. How do you feel?" Taken off guard a little by a giant fox asking him how he felt, he decided to answer. "Fine," Naruto replied, before staring at the fox in curiosity. The fox just burst out laughing, before saying, "You won't be fine when you wake up. Hell, the amount of injuries you sustained cost me a lot of chakra to heal. You'll be stiff and sore for a while. Though I have to applaud you for protecting your vixens." Naruto may not have been taught much, but that didn't mean he didn't have a vocabulary. Growing up on the streets he picked up a lot of words, and even secretly listened into some of the lessons taught at the orphanage to other kids. He knew basic numbers and many words, but didn't know how to read or write, but he never heard the word, vixens, before so he asked, and only got more laughter from the fox before said fox explained vixen meaning mate. Though the fox did face palm when Naruto asked what mate meant, all the while wondering why stupid humans would make another human stupider. Though did laugh when after the explanation Naruto turned completely red. "I can tell he's going to be a dense one. I may have some fun with this yet," the fox mused to himself. Naruto, wanting to quiet the idle chatter, finally asked the question that was bothering him. "What are you doing here and where is here? And didn't the Yondaime Hokage kill you?" asked Naruto, not liking where he was. The fox sighed before answering. "That blasted fourth Hokage sealed me in here, and where here is Kit, as you. Where in your mindscape?" Naruto was floored. He couldn't believe that his hero the Yondaime sealed the fox into him. Now all those comments his tormentors made a bunch of sense. "I really am a demon," he said to himself, but the fox heard him with his sharp hearing and burst out laughing. "Ha ha 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 ha. That's a good one, Kit. You a demon. Ha 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 ha." This did nothing more than to make the 6-year-old Naruto scowl. "What do you know, you fox?" he said with pain evident. The fox sighed as he saw Naruto start to tear up again. The fox sighed again before explaining, Kit, don't be like the other ignorant ones. When you look into this cage, do you see yourself? Naruto shook his head. What do you see? Naruto thought for a moment before replying with a foxy grin, something that told even the great Kyuubi no Yoko to be on guard. I see an overgrown furball. The fox's left eye was twitching and he had to silently give the Gaki this one, but revenge was swift. That right, you're an ignorant human, that's denser than Kiri's fog. Hearing Naruto yell, hey. This only served to make the fox chuckle before continuing. You are my jailer and nothing more. A human in body, heart, and mind, but a human sacrifice. A Jinchuriki. Jinchuko? Asked Naruto, interrupting to the annoyance of the fox. No, you stupid human, a Jinchuriki, a human sacrifice. You are the container of a demon but are not the demon themselves. You are cup and I am the tea. Now I'm tired and would like to go to bed. Since if you die, I die. Keeping you alive and then healing you for 8.5 days was a tiring affair and I would like to sleep. Now before I go I would like to explain some things to you. First, tell no one I spoke to you. Seeing that Naruto was about to interrupt him again, he continued swiftly. I want to see what's going on before I reveal some stuff to you that matters. Second, there are 2 pretty little girls who would be happy to see you're awake. This brought a smile to Naruto's whiskered face that had the fox chuckle darkly in his head for the shit he was going to give his container later. I set up a link with you so we can talk mentally so you don't have to talk with your mouth, just your mind, and lastly I will explain many things to you, Kit, but first I hope you like your body's changes. What? Screamed Naruto, trying to get a word in to figure out what the fox was saying, but was blown out of his mind by a huge gust of wind by the fox with a, "Bye Kit, remember what I said." Seconds later Naruto was outside of mind but the fox was still musing. The third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi had a busy next couple of days. After Murakumo Kurama and his family got back from their holiday in hot water country, he was summoned to the Hokage to be informed of the history and events. Though not happy, Hiashi and Shikaku helped quell his anger, and also agreed to help the third in the political aspect and keeping an eye on the young Jinchuriki. The third also gained some of Murakumo's respect again with his newfound declaration of making Naruto's life better as one of his top priorities. Not long after that meeting, Cat and Dog had their meeting together with the Hokage. Both were intrigued by her theory that Naruto was hiding from the ANBU out of fear of them. Something that brought up a lot of questions for all three, but had to be put on the back of their minds till Naruto was brought back. The third also consoled Kat and told her it wasn't her fault that Naruto escaped, saying that she was trying to take care of him and showed him kindness that he wasn't used to. He also explained to the duo that Naruto was stable and fine, but probably wouldn't wake up for a while. Lastly, he had to convince Kat that she couldn't go with Kakashi because she herself hadn't had much rest in the last month, but she would be one of the first to know when Naruto came back. Kakashi left soon after, but to not put fear in Naruto if Kat's theory was correct, Kakashi was sent in his Junin attire. Something that shocked a lot of ninja as he passed them to the gate, since many knew he was one of the longest running ANBU, well ever. It took him 4 days to get to Taki, and after going through Taki's village security checks he was briefed by Jiraiya on the specifics, before they both visited Naruto, and to say Kakashi was surprised by his new look was an understatement. Though there weren't many changes, that didn't stop him from realizing how close Naruto now looked like his deceased sensei. He also couldn't help but find that it was funny that, like his sensei, Naruto seemed to be a girl magnet, since Hinata and Junko visited him a lot when they were not playing with their new friend Fu. It also was funny when Osumu received the money. It was a huge amount of money and a letter. Osumu almost fell on the floor laughing when he read Sarutobi's note. Dear Osumu, leader of Takigakure. Here is your village's mission payments for the following missions. High S rank mission payment for guarding 3 high-class individuals and their 2 ninja bodyguards for 2 weeks. Higher rank mission payment for taking care of a valuable Konoha citizen and their injuries. Higher rank mission payment for all food, clothing, and shelter for the group. D-rank mission payment for the handling of these precious documents and high C-rank mission payment for any problems Jiraiya or Naruto may cause you. I hope the money issue is taken care of, and that our villages work better together more in the future. Your friend, ally, and compatriot. Horizon Sarutobi, 3rd Hokage of Konohagakure. Thanking Kami for his old friend, he decided to get lunch set up with Fu again. After the group, which included Dr. Fujimaki, Jiraiya, and Kakashi, left with the girls to the kitchen after Naruto was asleep for 8.5 days, they missed his awakening by 27 minutes. Naruto woke up, sat up, and stretched before rubbing the sleep from his eyes, all the while wondering where he was. His first conscious thoughts were a series of OWWs and ouches. Taking off the blanket, and seeing that he was only in a pair of underwear, Naruto looked around. The room looked like your typical hospital patient's room. All white, all dreary, and very much not a place Naruto wanted to be. The only things of note were a small brown table in the corner with noting on it, 3 plain brown chairs to his right, a heart monitor still attached to his chest and beeping, an IV stand and stick still stuck in his arm, a full-person wall mirror next to the only door, and a weight scale, while he was sitting on the very typical dreary hospital bed while the whole place smelled of antiseptic. Never liking the hospital but still very curious about these changes the fox told him about. He decided to check himself out, so ripping off the heart monitor, and dragging the IV stand over to the mirror. He was shocked at what he saw, although not serious changes, they were definite nonetheless. He heard laughing in his head, but it was ignored due to the shock. His whisker marks were a little darker and more pronounced, his canine teeth, though not as long as an Inazaka, were still pretty long and sharper, made more pronounced and sharp, as he cut his finger easily on it, though the fox healed him in a blink of an eye. He got a head taller, and his naturally spiky hair became more spikier, like his father's hair but without the bangs on each side of his face. The most interesting change was that all the spike tips in his hair were a medium blend of burgundy and blood red color. A moment later, Nani was heard throughout that section of the bunker, including the occupied huge dining room connected to the kitchen, where a bunch of heads looked up in surprise and some in joy. Back in the infirmary, Naruto was touching his hair. "What's the meaning of this furball?" asked Naruto in shock. The fox sighed after getting up from his brief start to sleep before speaking. "Damn it, Kit, I told you to speak in your head, not out loud. I don't want people to know I can speak to you yet. Remember the conversation a few minutes ago?" Naruto at least had the decency to look sheepish while rubbing the back of his head with his left hand. The hand thing only reinforcing who the fox thought of as who the father of this kid was. He already knew who his mother was, and who she loved. He just needed confirmation. "Sorry, furball, I'll try to do that from now on. By the way, what's a kit?" Naruto said mentally this time to the fox. The fox, though was pleased that Naruto was speaking in his mind, was still pretty irked, and Naruto could tell. A kit is a young or baby fox. Now that that's out of the way, if you don't mind, I want some sleep. So don't interrupt me unless it's vital that we must talk. With that, the fox shut the link and went back to sleep. Though not known to Naruto was the fox was keeping part of himself aware of what was going on with Naruto on the outside. Naruto just sighed, before trying to get the IV out of his arm. Just as he was successful and the fox healed the wound, the door opened to reveal to Naruto, Jiraiya and Dr. Fujimaki, but that's not who Naruto saw. Naruto saw his 2 friends, overjoyed to see him directly in front of the 2 men, and ran up to them and hugged them rather tightly, not in the slightest bit aware that he was hugging them while in his underwear. Osumu once again burst out laughing at what he defines as life's moments of random laughs, while Kakashi and Jiraiya let out perverted giggles, and Jiraiya was writing in a notebook furiously, before addressing a new medical emergency. Though neither of the 2 young girls or Fu were in the mindset of adults, and Naruto would become a legendary dense like his father before, that still didn't stop them being shy to the opposite and embarrassing situations. Since now poor little Hinata was redder than the Kyuubi's fire attacks and was left steaming in Naruto's arms in a dead faint, Fu was blushing at the boy curiously while hiding behind Osumu, who was still laughing, while Junko was looking very flustered and out of her element. She was always considered a tomboyish girl or tough girl, and a boy in his underwear hugging her took her by surprise and out of her element and was almost as red as poor Hinata, who by now was inventing new colors of red for the color chart. Dr. Fujimaki was just sweat dropping in the background and didn't know how to take the absurd situation in front of him. Behind him, a male about 8 years old wearing clothes similar to Osumu but with left shoulder guard and 2 twin kunai and ninja star pouches on his legs, with long black hair, was looking at the scene with a raised eyebrow and a slight cough in his arm to hide his laugh, while his guard behind him, who looked to be the same age as Osumu with long black shaggy hair in a bandana, looked at the scene with a raised eyebrow but an air of indifference. A moment later though, Naruto started shaking, which surprisingly got Hinata up, and both girls turned to normal when they found that Naruto was crying. Concerned, both held on to him, but Junko beat Hinata first in asking what was wrong. Already knowing what was going on, Osumu heralded his aide Suion and his son Shibuki out the door and closed it behind him, while Dr. Fujimaki decided to turn off the heart monitor and check charts in the background, giving his own sign that he wanted to check on Naruto, but at the same time giving the Konoha group their privacy. Naruto was bawling and hugging the two girls in a vice and saying, "Sorry, sorry, sorry," over and over again. It broke heartstrings of all there. "I failed to protect you guys, my first friends. I failed, he explained with tears again before the girls hugged him back and looking at each other on the other side of the hugs and giving a knowing look to each other before turning back to face Naruto. "You didn't fail us, Naruto-kun," started Junko. "Why, you saved us the best you could, and we weren't in jurr ed at all," Hinata finished, both with determined looks and smiles. Naruto looked at both of the girls with shock, before having a very rare warmth go where his heart and soul were before putting on what would later be called his lady-killing smile. "Thanks girls, that means a lot," he said while a few tears were still falling from his cheeks. Inside though, he was thinking determinedly to never let it happen again. Hinata then did something very bold but instinctually of rubbing tears from her friend's cheek near his eye, unintentionally rubbing one of his whisker marks. Which made Naruto's face give an "I'm in heaven" look and turning into the rub while purring. Hinata stopped what she was doing in shock of her actions and its consequences. While everyone else looked at the blonde with his face in bliss, was ignorant to the shocked looks that everyone was giving him. Dr. Fujimaki dropped the chart he was looking at and the fox inside Naruto's gut was open-eyed and surprised. Junko broke out of her stupor to rub the right cheek's whisker marks, starting the purring again and putting Naruto's face into one of now total bliss, and stopped a second later. Junko looked at Hinata, while simultaneously Hinata looked at Junko. Then aloud, "Kawaii," was yelled by the normally terribly shy Hyuga heiress and the tomboyish girl in unison before making on the adults jump back while the girls tackled Naruto. Naruto was in bliss 1 second, surprised the next, hurt a second after that, as his head hit the floor, and then back to total bliss as the two girls continued while laying over him and rubbing his cheeks and causing the purring to continue in renewed vigor. Dr. Fujimaki was trying to think how this was possible. Kakashi was speechless, as well as Osumu, who just walked back to the room to find what's going on, and Jiraiya was over his surprise in seconds and now scribbling madly while thinking of writing his next big hit, in which he decided to name Ika Ika, Fox Tales. On another note, it became book 1, of which would later have several additional volumes of the most successful Ika Ika book since the first volume. This went on for at least 10 minutes before, while the adults were sweat dropping as the purring got louder. Then Kakashi's god-smacked brain finally rebooted and he leaned in, asked Jiraiya if the seal was fine. Jiraiya nodded and explained all was fine and there wasn't anything out of place, but had no idea what was going on. A question that they would never get fully explained until they went to heaven and talked to one party-loving deity that likes to get drunk. The conversation took a minute to explain, and when they looked down they found the shy heiress now rubbing her face on Naruto's like a cat, and Junko making swirls on the whisker marks. They decided to end the fun here before it got out of control. Though Kakashi was sure that the situation was already out of control, it being a cute scene be damned. So Kakashi cleared his throat and both girls looked up curiously at the Cyclops-like Junin. Smiling, the young Junin asked kindly if they were done. Both girls realized what they were doing a second later and both had full-blown blushes on their faces, but Hinata looked down and mumbled while Junko looked off to the side. "I'm sorry Hinata-san, I could hear what you said," asked the still smiling Junin. So looking shyly at Kakashi and now Jiraiya, who stopped writing and was now standing next to him, she asked, "F5 more minutes?" Naruto was blushing at his ability to purr, finding it a horrible thing and not cool at all. It took him a few seconds to get out of his blissful haze, and now that he was out he didn't necessarily want to go back into that rather embarrassing circumstance. So he jumped up really fast and startled the girls as they fell on the floor on their behinds. He was about to put his hand behind his head like always in his nervous habit and say bluntly, "No," but never got that far as he looked down at his two friends. The look in their eyes was like that shark's circling prey, and it scared the hell out of him worse than a world without any ramen. Okay, maybe not that bad, but a close second. The girls were reaching their hands out and moving their little fingers closer and closer to his cheeks, and Naruto, on instincts honed from living on the streets and with his danger sense going off like crazy, was telling him to run and never look back. "Hey girls, we don't need to," he never finished as his danger sense went into overdrive as the girls had their eyes covered in their hairline and stood up. Now Naruto just turned around and started running around the hospital room as the two young girls chased him and begging to let them continue as the adults laughed at the poor red-tipped blonde's expense and Jiraiya continued to write madly in his notepad. None of them though realized that Suion left the bunker and was talking to three female Chunin and a stoic male Junin about something devious. Back the bunker, Shibuki and Fu were continuing back to hospital room after dishing up a plates of Fu's home cooking for this Naruto with the help of his cousin's best friend Kegan, who just showed up. Kegan had a thick head of black hair, deep green eyes, and light blue short-sleeve shirt and dark blue jeans on. Kegan treated her neutrally mostly but was still nice a bit, which was better than everyone else outside the bunker. She only wondered what this voice in her head kept asking before stopping outside the kitchen. A second later though, her back was in pain while she was covered in a shroud and crying in pain. Her shouts and release of Biju chakra alerted the others. In the other room Osamu and Jiraiya said a collective, "Shit," before racing out of the room hoping nothing bad happened. Before Dr. Fujimaki following quickly behind a spilt second later while Kakashi kept the now sparkling curious eyes of the kids on him. He was praying inside though that the Biju didn't get free while asking the kids silly questions to distract them. Naruto though looked him curiously and asked, "Why do you dress so weird?" Kakashi blinked for a minute before smiling and said, "Because it makes me look cool." Naruto squinted his eyes a little before saying, "I think you look like a scarecrow," making the two girls behind him giggle and him deflate his shoulders and making him sigh. The trio rushed in the hall only to find something they weren't expecting. They found the 8-year-olds Kegan and Shibuki over Fu in shock trying to pick her up. Though that being hard to do normally made it incredibly hard for them due to a pair of bright but they had to admit beautiful green wings that looked like they belonged on a butterfly on her back but with greenish chakra surrounding her from all sides. Jiraiya was quick to add a seal to her forehead and making her half-lidded eyes close for good into unconsciousness. He quickly told the boys to go back to the kitchen as he pulled her the back of the top part of her seal and looked at her upper back. There he was shocked but quickly angry. He asked for a copy of the seal that Dr. Fujimaki had and he was quick to pull it out of a storage seal and gave it to Jiraiya. Seeing the seal didn't match, he cursed openly while he ran to the sealing room with two worried men ran after him while he explained to them the problem. Someone put a time-release seal on Fu that would force huge amounts of demonic chakra from the seal. It would have a slim chance though to set the Biju free but would hurt Fu badly. Both men were angry upon hearing that but when asked who had a copy of the seal for a just in case both men thought for a while until their eyes widened and said at the same time, "Suion." Jiraiya quickly put a stronger seal on her that was similar to Naruto's but not as good. Before taking her to a room near the kitchen dining room area. Osumu decided to stay with her and explain some things to her while both men knew what those things were. Back in Konoha, Dr. Yuhara was running some of his experiments on the Uzumaki DNA and such. Now most would think that those experiments would be unethical. Admittingly, they didn't ask for Naruto's permission for some blood and DNA samples, but they weren't experimenting on him as what Orochimaru would have done. Dr. Yuhara was however double-checking if not triple-checking his findings and making sure things in Naruto's genealogy checked out with all parts. He was just getting ready to pack up for the day and do a few checkup rounds at the ANBU wing of the hospital, but just had to check one more piece of paper when he noticed something odd. The paper looked just like the one he just read, but the name was different. So running to the file of the original, he dug through the whole thing for an hour before he found what he was looking for under an alias. Looking at the alias and who he was married to, he looked through the right folders until he found it. When he saw the folder, he fell on the ground in shock. He sat there for a second before he scrambled up. He then brought it back and looked between the 4 medical folders before it hit him. Shit, he yelled before remembering protocol and putting all his stuff away properly, but in record time you'd think he was Yellow Flash. Before running to the Hokage's office to show him what he found. If this was right, then Konoha up worse than they ever thought, but he couldn't help but question why the person did what they did. Dr. Fujimaki was quick to clear up Naruto after he found that besides the fact that he has good bite now, he was clear and healthy. Jiraiya was shocked to discover traces of another seal that was attached to the original, that he cursed himself for missing it before but wondered where the seal went, but decided to keep the fact to himself for now. Then, like Dr. Fujimaki rehearsed with Jiraiya in the hall, he talked the 2 girls into helping him make popcorn for the movie that they were all going to watch. Naruto was about to follow his friends out when he was stopped by a hand from Jiraiya, who looked worried. "Naruto, could you hold up for a second?" he said as he signaled Kakashi to stay as well with his eyes. Looking up at him with innocent but burden-filled sparkling eyes that reminded Jiraiya of both his parents, he gulped as he motioned Naruto toward the bed. He wanted to get this done in Konoha, but the girl's story of Naruto's life tore him so much that he couldn't hold it anymore. He figured that since Kakashi's here and Osumu was telling Fu about her burden, then he should man up as well. Kakashi knew instantly what was going to happen and was a bit scared about how this was going to play out, but would stay for his sensei and for Naruto. It's time he got his little brother. Naruto, after getting up on the bed and still curious, looked up and asked, "What is it, Jiraiya?" Jiraiya took a big breath of air before taking the plunge. "Naruto, I don't know how to tell you this in ahead of time, I'm sorry, but," he took another deep breath, "I'm your godfather." He closed his eyes and waited for the crying the "I hate yous" anything, but what he was not expecting was, "What's a godfather?" Causing Jiraiya and a very nervous Kakashi to face palm and curse in their heads. After getting up and brushing himself off, Jiraiya explained that a godmother is a female that parents would request take over their role if something happened to them or they died, while a godfather was the male version of that. This caused Naruto's eyes to widen and look at Jiraiya with tears in his eyes and asked where he was all this time. Something Jiraiya expected he would ask, and he went on to explain his spy network, but from reports he found that he was on his way back to Konoha to be with Naruto. This caused a still teary Naruto to think for a moment on that before he started crying a little before bawling. What he was the grown men were not expecting was for Naruto to latch onto Jiraiya and ask, "Can I stay with you now then?" This broke the dam, and after Jiraiya said yes, Naruto broke into tears of joy and into excitedly ballistic celebrating of dancing around the room. He stopped though when he realized that something was hinted, and he looked back at Jiraiya and asked about his parents. This is what Jiraiya was nervous about, but explained everything that the third explained to the room full of ninja to Naruto, including the part about Tsunade being alive and the fox, as well as why all of it was hidden and why the secret were meant to be hidden still, and why Naruto was picked to hold the fox. Jiraiya made Naruto swear not to tell a soul about his heritage till Jiraiya gave him a nod but said he could tell people he was part of the Uzumaki clan if he trusted that person, and the fox if he wanted to, after some arguing on Naruto's part in a compromise, but Naruto promised to keep the rest a secret. Naruto hid the fact that he knew about the fox well since he was used to having a mask on, but the Tsunade revelation brought him into tears again, asking why she abandoned him. This brought on the next revelation that Tsunade didn't know about him, and after begging Jiraiya to look for her, he said they would have to talk to the Hokage first as a matter of precaution. In reality, they didn't want to find Tsunade yet for several reasons. First and foremost, they didn't even know where she was, as she hid rather well and Jiraiya was the only one who could find her. Second was that they wanted to get Naruto situated with their plan before they added Tsunade to the mix. It wasn't Naruto that they were worried about, but Tsunade and the damage she would cause and surely release his heritage in her rage. Not to mention, if they made up a bit with Naruto, it could lessen the damage that Tsunade was sure to throw around in Konoha, as she would tell people that Naruto was at least part Senju. Kami still helped them though. They wanted Naruto to be able to defend himself a bit first before they opened that door, and so with that well-placed excuse they went upon to explain Kakashi and that he was Naruto's surrogate older brother. After explaining what surrogate meant, Naruto was happy to gain a brother figure, and a little to Jiraiya's disappointment, Naruto loved to climb up Kakashi back, a lot, and get his Nissan piggyback rides, though he sweet-talked Jiraiya into them as well. Not long after getting acquainted with both and hearing stories of his parents and clans from both and their histories, both asked Naruto to explain his story of his life in the village and where he stayed exactly and why he hid. Kakashi though knew a bit about the situation more than most. He and Jiraiya were furious about the torture and hell inflicted upon Naruto for the past few years, starting at the orphanage and going into his life on the streets. They were both, however, surprised and proud of Naruto's cunning and creativeness though. Especially in two parts besides just his basic survival and hiding skills. The parts where he hid in plain sight of ninja or hid around them while they were looking for him, or parts that involved his exploits in the Forest of Death. Where both paled when he told them a story of playing with the big white tigers in the forest and protecting a few cubs from a decent-sized boa constrictor snake with a giant stick till the parent tigers showed up and killed it, and by the time he was done with a few more stories both men were frothing at the mouth at his rather lucky if not suicidal happenings in the forest. Both men made him reluctantly swear not to go in there without one of them in the future. Due to the stories though, they realized the two things that made sense now of why they couldn't find him and why he was afraid of the ANBU, both of which were Cat's guesses, making them true. He was constantly on the move and going places that the ANBU wouldn't dream of finding Naruto, and only came out to find food and more materials for shelter. And he was afraid of ANBU from them coming to ironically rescue him from the nurse that was trying to kill him in the hospital, as he thought they were going to harm him. One look at the dog mask that Kakashi pulled out all but brought this sad thing to a full understanding. He avoided the ANBU, which made it hard for them to find him because he thought they were going to harm him. The truth became a full circle. Kakashi explained what the situation to Naruto as he hid behind Jiraiya and got confirmation on the theory, making it legitimate. They explained that the Hokage was the old man that was always trying to help him from the people who thought he was the fox or their scapegoat for fear, loss, and hate, and that the masked people were there to try to find and help Naruto. Kakashi explained that he was the assistant commander to all of ANBU for Konoha, and that Naruto, much to his surprise, got almost to whole of ANBU's respect when he explained that he hid from them for a little over a year. He also explained that he had nothing to fear from them as they were there to help and were the guardians of Konoha. His final statement put stars in Naruto's eyes, making him say, "You're so cool, Nissan." Just like what a future Sarutobi would be like for Naruto, while Jiraiya grumbled about being forgot before doing his kabuki entrance and getting his points back from Naruto, who thought the toads were the coolest things ever. The group talked for hours as they settled down, and they brought some of Fu's cooking in, and Naruto ate it all with the most atrocious manners that any of them ever saw, though he thought the food was awesome. He didn't even use chopsticks, and when he said he didn't know how, it made Jiraiya pissed that the orphanage matron was dead, because she should be lucky she was, for Jiraiya wanted to do to her. After teaching him to use the chopsticks properly and watching him fumble a bit with his meal, they talked a bit more while introducing Dr. Fujimaki and Osumu to Naruto and were quick to like the kid. Naruto thanked the good doctor for treating him and Osumu for hosting him and showed Osumu where he thought the Hiraishin tag was on the table in the war room after he asked. The group already explained his bloodline to him, but they told him not to do it again as he almost died of chakra depletion. Osumu didn't remove the tag but told Naruto that unless it was an emergency not to use it to come to his village in a kind way. This got Naruto to promise and do his famous that he would never break a promise speech that he would become known for. They all talked a bit till Naruto rubbed his chibi eyes and fell asleep on Jiraiya's lap. They all looked proudly at Naruto for being so strong for what he had to endure as Jiraiya carried Naruto to the girls' room when the others weren't looking with a twinkle in his eyes. No, he wasn't being a pervert but a trickster here. He could tell that Naruto was going to be a girl magnet when he was older and he already got two in the future if his friends here wear anything to go by. He was just going to push it along but at the three girl fell asleep comforting Fu thought they didn't know about the Nanabi yet, they were all asleep in the same bed, so Jiraiya put Naruto in the other empty bed and with a happy look at his godson, he closed the door for the night. He was curious how they were going to react. Back in Konoha. In the Hokage's office things were getting a bit shocking. Inside were Shikaku, Dr. Yuhara, and the Hokage only. Even the ANBU that normally hid in the room were outside for this secret meeting. Are you sure this is right, Doc? Asked a serious Shikaku while the Hokage behind him was freaking out and sweating in the background. The good doctor nodded. Yes, Shikaku-san. Tsunade hid the files good and right but I caught them by chance though I'm willing to bet she doesn't know about him. That still doesn't change the facts. Naruto Uzumaki is her grandson and Dan Kato is his grandfather, who was by what Hokage-sama said the bastard son of the Namikaze clan head. As Hokage-sama already mentioned that Tsunade and Dan were secretly married as well, it doesn't change the fact that Konoha is going to be shown her wrath when she finds out, he explained with a bit of fear. While the Hokage said, "Kami help us," while the other two nodded. The Hokage made it an SS rank secret till he could talk to Jiraiya about this. He didn't know what was worse target on the back of Naruto's head right now, the fact he was a Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, the heir of Minato Namikaze and the Namikaze clan, the last prince of Uzushiogakure, or mainline Senju heir that could trace his lineage to his great-great-grandfather Hashirama and great-great-grand-uncle Tobirama. All the three men knew was that there was a giant bullseye on Konoha if Tsunade found out. They'd have to plan this right and carefully. For Kami really helped them. Back in Taki, it seems that after finding out you diversion they sent Jiraiya on your case Suian, said the brown-haired short female Taki Chunin as she came running up to their hidden location with news. After discovering the seal was tampered with, Osumu made an announcement to the village that Suian was a traitor and that he would be hunted. After a little bit of investigation by Jiraiya after Naruto fell asleep, it was determined that at least Taki Junin's Suika asterisk was in on whatever was going on as well. This caused a near riot to find out that Suika and Suian were trying to, from what they gathered, to overthrow Osumu and take over the village. Teams were sent out to find them or clues but outside of the Suika part nothing turned up. While the two Junins were biding their time in the Tree of Life, the big tree in the center of the village to strike still but while trying to find the hero's water. So they would be sure to succeed. While the three female Taki Chunin acting like they were in on the search were actually spying and keeping them informed. So it would seem, Suian to the other two. But it matters not. Once I get past this barrier, he said as he pointed to a greenish barrier behind him, then we can proceed with our plans. Inform the others waiting to strike that they will be paid upon completion. The female Chunin nodded before shining away, while Suika and Suian smiled at each other. Their game may have been compromised but they were still playing. Meanwhile in Iwagakure, the third Tsuchikage Unoki of both scales was looking at a report inside. He honestly thought the brat was dead. Not by his hand or his actions, but no in the Kyuubi attack. The announcement that the Kushina and her child died as well as her marriage to the Yondaime became public knowledge after the attack. Now you would think that the Tsuchikage would be ecstatic that this was case but you'd be wrong. He never wanted to end up in the Third Great Shinobi War, but his very old daimyo wanted more land and power, so he sent troops out to do that, knowing a war would break out. After the yellow flash of Konoha, Minato Namikaze killed 319 of his ninja with one move while rescuing 4 ninja that were left of what would have been a certain victory in their land part, and a few more bad skirmishes during the war. He sued for peace while he, with the help of the daimyo's only surviving heir, his nephew who was more understanding to the situation, planned a coup, and the next day after it was successful and the old earth daimyo was dead. The peace treaty happened a few days after that. A few months later, despite the Yondaime trying to keep it hidden, Unoki's spies discovered that he was married and going to have a child. He sent a letter wanting to meet just Cage with one bodyguard to Cage with one bodyguard. Minato agreed. True to both their words, they only had one each. Unoki brought his son and Junin commander Kitsuchi after explaining his plan. His country, despite its better communication with Earth Country's capital and political climate, was doing poorly economically, while Fire Country and its rather central location were booming, one of the many reasons that the war started by the jealous old Earth daimyo. Minato brought Junin and close friend Akihiko Yumino with him. They four were the only ones who knew what they were about to do, and for 2 days made a treaty that was bound by marriage between Naruto and Kitsuchi's daughter and Unoki's precious granddaughter Kuretsuchi. Minato didn't like using his son like this but agreed to keep it a secret for now. He was afraid of his wife's reaction, while the other agreed to it as well. Each were given a copy of the military and economic pact that were make the former enemy villages that were extreme rivals become allies. It was a major alliance that would eventually allow Iwa to get in good graces with Sunagakure, Takigakure, Hoshigakure, and Kusagakure. Kusa may have been a stretch, as both Iwa and Kusa have had long-standing feud. The treaty would hopefully at least allow some breathing room for them to work it out, and it would sure shock the world. The treaty though was kept secret because the Tsuchikage made sure that marriage was the key to the treaty. Many enemy nations or groups would do anything they could to possibly stop such a union or cause a civil war within Iwa, and more than anything both sides feared for their respective children that they decided not to announce it until Naruto was 12, since Kuretsuchi was 2 years old when they met the Konoha party for the alliance meeting. The problem with the matter was that both Akihiko and Minato died the night of the Kyuubi incident, and the treaty was left in the Namikaze clan scroll that was locked in Namikaze estate that no one but Naruto could enter. So no one in Konoha knew about the treaty. However, their spies just confirmed that Naruto was alive and living, and that he was possibly the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. This made both Unoki happy and sad. Sad because he would be giving away his granddaughter to Konoha, just leaving her brother Akatsuchi as his only heir left in the village besides his son, who he hoped would take his mantle one day once he gets a bit stronger. The other really sad part was that her dream and aspersion was to be a serious kunoichi and become the first female Tsuchikage. Unoki knew the second part wasn't going to happen now, and the treaty still stands tall. Iwa got a little more stable but definitely wasn't doing as good as Konoha, and many ninja would definitely hold resentment toward Naruto for his father. Now he would have to replan his strategy on how to approach this scenario and see where it goes. He'd wait for the blonde Gaki to enter the Chunin exam and hold off his granddaughter to do the same and see where life takes him. He wasn't the legendary fence sitter for noting. He already swore the spy to secrecy, and now he had to talk to his son, and after calling his aide and having him get his son, as he thought, well, I don't know if I should be happy with the circumstances or pissed that this is going to cause me more paperwork, before yelling as his back gave out again.